President Trump criticized U.S. Olympic skier Hunter Haas after the athlete said he had mixed emotions about representing the United States during the Winter Games in Italy. In a Truth Social post, Trump questioned why an athlete would publicly distance himself from the country would seek a spot on the national team, saying it made support difficult. The episode stands out because presidents rarely comment directly on individual Olympians, underscoring how politics has increasingly intersected with international sports. While some athletes echoed Haas' concern about current U.S. policies, others emphasized their pride in competing for the country despite political disagreements. The controversy highlights broader tensions around national identity and representation as the Olympics place American athletes and U.S. leadership under global scrutiny. A wave of new AI tools, especially Anthropic's Claude agents, has spooked investors, triggering sharp sell-offs in software stocks as fears grow that companies can replace traditional software with AI-built tools. Inside corporations, employees and executives are actively experimenting with AI to automate tasks like legal review, coding, marketing, and financial analysis, sometimes cutting software subscriptions. Despite the panic, many tech leaders and analysts argued the software is dead narrative is overblown, noting that enterprise software is deeply embedded, risk-sensitive, and hard to replace. Incumbent software vendors retain advantages such as proprietary data, industry expertise, reliability, and the ability to integrate AI directly into their platforms. The likely outcome is not the collapse of software, but a reshaping of it, where weaker tools fade, stronger players adapt, and AI-driven customization increases pressure, consolidation, and negotiation leverage. Anthropic, once seen as trailing in the AI race, jolted global markets after rolling out powerful new Claude add-ons and advanced models that rattle software, legal, and data-centric stocks. Its tools, including autonomous AI agents and industry-specific capabilities like legal services, sparked fears that AI could rapidly replace long-standing corporate expertise and entire SaaS business models. The company's safety-first strategy, delayed launch, and focus on coding and enterprise customers initially slowed growth but ultimately positioned it strongly with business users. Recent data show Anthropic dominating API-based enterprise AI spending, putting it on track to reach profitability earlier than rivals such as OpenAI. While tech leaders warn the market reaction may be overblown, Anthropic's rise underscores a broader reckoning as AI reshapes corporate strategy and fuels massive global tech investment. The Trump administration has finalized a rule that would make it easier to discipline or remove roughly 50,000 senior federal career employees whose roles are closely tied to implementing presidential policy. The change creates a new employment category with fewer procedural protections, narrowing long-standing limits on when high-level career officials can be fired or disciplined. Administration officials argue the rule strengthens accountability and ensures that policy-shaping roles are carried out in line with the elected president's agenda rather than internal resistance. Supporters say the move could help streamline government operations and reduce bureaucratic obstacles that slow or dilute executive priorities. While unions warn of politicization, the administration maintains that safeguards for whistleblowers remain intact and that the reform affects only a small portion of the federal workforce. Newly released Justice Department files reveal how Jeffrey Epstein cultivated influence across business, medicine, and entertainment through personal relationships, emails, and social access. The documents show flirtatious 2003 email exchanges between Olympic organizer Casey Wasserman and Ghislaine Maxwell, alongside evidence that Wasserman flew on Epstein's jet before Epstein faced criminal charges. Celebrity physician Peter Attia appears extensively in the files, with emails and meetings indicating an ongoing relationship with Epstein from 2014 through 2019. Even after Epstein's prior conviction. Photos and emails also link film director Brett Ratner to Epstein and his circle, complicating Ratner's recent Hollywood comeback after earlier sexual misconduct allegations. Together, the files illustrate how Epstein's network extended far beyond famous politicians and royals to include powerful professionals whose connections largely escaped scrutiny until now. Bill and Hillary Clinton offered to give depositions to a GOP-led House committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein, days before a potential contempt of Congress vote. Their attorneys proposed appearing on mutually agreeable dates and urged the committee to halt contempt proceedings. House Oversight Chair James Comer said the offer lacked clarity, with the committee seeking filmed, transcribed depositions this month without time limits. The committee previously rejected the Clintons' proposed interviews and sworn statements as unreasonable restrictions that could undermine the investigation. The Clintons deny any wrongdoing or knowledge of Epstein's crimes, while Democrats accuse Republicans of overlooking Donald Trump's past ties to Epstein. Xi Jinping has consolidated absolute control over China's military by purging nearly all of the senior generals he personally appointed, leaving himself as the sole authoritative voice on Taiwan strategy. The arrest of General Zhang Yujia, a close ally, removes internal checks on Xi's decision-making and underscores his determination to enforce unquestioned loyalty within the armed forces. While China is racing toward the 2027 military modernization goal, analysts believe a near-term invasion of Taiwan is less likely, with Beijing instead favoring coercive tactics short of war. These tactics include large-scale military exercises, cyber attacks, economic pressure, legal measures against Taiwanese officials, and diplomatic intimidation to weaken Taiwan's resolve. Xi's confidence is reinforced by his assessment that U.S. commitment to Taiwan, particularly under President Trump, is uncertain, even as Washington seeks to deter conflicts by raising the cost of Chinese military action. President Trump delivered a Rose-style speech at a closed-door Washington dinner, joking about his Federal Reserve nominee, Kevin Warsh, while later emphasizing that the remarks were clearly in jest. He underscored that he sought no commitments from Warsh, reinforcing the principle that the Fed should operate independently even as Trump continues to press for lower interest rates. Trump's nomination of Warsh, an experienced former Fed governor, ended weeks of deliberation and reflected the president's desire for a steady hand with crisis-tested credentials. The evening highlighted Trump's comfort engaging across the political spectrum as he mingled with current and former leaders, judges, and business figures while keeping the tone light. Alongside humor, Trump signaled firmness on major issues like Iran and monetary policy, projecting a blend of confidence, clarity, and control over his administration's direction. President Trump announced he will nominate former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh as the next Fed chair, replacing Jerome Powell when his term ends in mid-May, pending Senate confirmation. Warsh, who served in the Fed from 2006 to 2011 and played a key role during the financial crisis, has aligned himself with Trump's long-standing criticism of the central bank. The nomination follows months of deliberation and reflects Trump's desire for a chair more responsive to his push for significantly lower interest rates. Warsh inherits a divided Fed grappling with above-target inflation, debates over further rate cuts, and new challenges including tariffs, artificial intelligence, and digital currencies. His appointment could mark a major shift in Fed policy and independence, with implications for inflation expectations, long-term borrowing costs, and market confidence. Dana White has transformed the UFC from a fringe sport into a global powerhouse valued at over $20 billion, anchored by a new $1.1 billion a year media deal with Paramount. He has become both the public face of mixed martial arts and a cultural figure aligned with President Trump and the mega ecosystem, blending sports, media, and politics through a shared emphasis on masculinity and spectacle. The Paramount partnership marks a major strategic shift away from pay-per-view, testing whether the UFC can broaden its audience through mainstream streaming. Beyond UFC, White is expanding into boxing, viral slap fighting entertainment, and corporate influence, including a board seat at Meta. As his influence grows, White faces rising challenges around gambling integrity, political proximity, and executing high-profile events like a planned UFC fight on the White House lawn. President Trump adjusted his immigration enforcement approach in Minneapolis after a disturbing video of a fatal shooting by a federal agent raised serious questions and dominated national coverage. As early claims by some officials failed to align with emerging facts, Trump grew concerned that the situation risked distracting from broader progress in his immigration agenda. Republican allies and outside supporters urged the president to take control of the narrative and prevent isolated incidents from overshadowing his policy goals. Within 48 hours, Trump moved decisively, bringing in trusted border advisor Tom Homan, removing senior personnel on the ground, and signaling openness to cooperation with state and local leaders. The episode underscored Trump's willingness to recalibrate tactics to maintain public confidence while keeping immigration enforcement a central priority of his presidency. A U.S. Border Patrol officer fatally shot Alex Preddy, a 37-year-old intensive care nurse, in Minneapolis while he was filming ICE agents, sharply escalating tensions between Minnesota and the federal government. The shooting followed the earlier killing of Renee Good by a federal agent, which sparked protests after federal officials blocked local investigations and labeled both victims domestic terrorists. Minnesota leaders, including Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis police officials, rejected federal claims that Preddy posed a threat, citing his lack of a criminal record and asserting state authority. Protests erupted near the scene, with federal agents using crowd control tactics as anger grew over the large federal immigration presence. The Trump administration defended the crackdown as immigration enforcement, while state officials denounced it as a politically motivated federal occupation and mobilized the National Guard. A group of House Democrats joined Republicans on the Oversight Committee to advance a contempt of Congress resolution against former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton over their refusal to testify about Jeffrey Epstein. The vote went against the wishes of Democratic leadership and signaled a broader effort by the party to distance itself from the Clintons' long-standing influence. Democratic supporters of the measure said the decision was based on accountability, the rule of law, and respect for congressional subpoenas rather than partisan loyalty. Party strategists acknowledge that Bill Clinton's ties to Epstein complicate Democrats' attacks on President Trump and expose them to charges of hypocrisy. The contempt vote raises the possibility of further legal and political consequences for the Clintons, while the fight over the release and the use of Epstein files is likely to intensify. Elon Musk is re-entering U.S. politics ahead of the 2026 midterms, reopening his checkbook and political operation after a brief pullback to focus on his businesses. His relationship with President Trump has warmed again, reviving a pragmatic alliance that pairs Musk's money and tech infrastructure with Trump's political influence. Musk has already given millions to Republican efforts, including backing a Senate race in Kentucky, while weighing whether to route support through America PAC or other GOP-aligned groups. The strategy centers on turning Trump's presidential voters into consistent midterm and down-ballot participants, a move Republicans see as crucial to defending narrow congressional majorities. Despite historical midterm headwinds, the renewed Trump-Musk partnership signals confidence that organization, turnout, and discipline could help Republicans outperform expectations. President Trump sharply de-escalated tensions over Greenland in Davos, ruling out the use of force and pivoting toward what he called the framework of a future deal that advances U.S. strategic interests without immediate confrontation. After intensive behind-the-scenes talks with NATO and European leaders, Trump also suspended threatened tariffs, signaling flexibility while keeping leverage at the negotiating table. The emerging framework could secure expanded U.S. military access, stronger Arctic security cooperation, and protection against Chinese and Russian influence in Greenland's mineral sector. Trump's advisors argued the episode shows his hardline opening posture successfully pushed Europe to engage on issues it had long resisted discussing. By backing diplomacy once talks became productive, Trump positioned the U.S. to pursue long-term strategic gains at relatively low cost while easing pressure on NATO allies.